Welcome to this edition of the Rasheed Report. Today we'll be talking about something that almost all of you have never, or at most vaguely heard of, the ongoing persecution of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. Now Myanmar, or as most people know it as, that one country on my globe with two names, is located right next to Thailand in Southeast Asia, and primarily Buddhist. Now I know what you're thinking, a Buddhist country? That can't be right. Buddhists are all peaceful. Them persecuting and killing people is about as big of a paradox as killer Care Bears or the people sworn to protect us shooting us down in the streets. But yes, in the Rakhine state of Myanmar, violent Buddhists argue that the Rohingya Muslims pose an existential threat. And because of this, the Rohingya people have suffered state-sponsored discrimination in the form of denial of citizenship, restrictions on basic rights, such as freedom of mobility, and even restrictions on how many kids they can have. All of this because of an existential threat that doesn't even make up 4% of the country's population. The state-sponsored discrimination originated in 1982 when the government officially stripped the Rohingya people of their citizenship, and since then, they've been classified as foreign residents, even though they've lived there for generations. They are excluded in the census, not recognized as a race, and have been deprived of their basic human rights ever since. Their everyday conditions are exemplified in places such as the ghetto of Algamin Lar, a cramped quarter in the Rakhine state. This entire community is so closed off by barbed wire and police checkpoints that it basically looks like you're in District 12 from the Hunger Games. This modern-day apartheid is so cruel that residents of Algamin Lar can't even go to the hospital within walking distance because, as one resident put it, if we go there, they inject us with poison to kill us. It's these kind of conditions that the Rohingya people have lived in every day, and why they're ranked #1 most persecuted group, as well as the #1 group most susceptible to genocide by the UN. This is why they're leaving by the literal boatload. In the past 2 months alone, 4,000 Rohingya have crammed themselves on boats whose captains have abandoned them with almost no supplies. Imagine life of Pi, but instead replace the tiger with 725 other people stranded with you with barely any food. Your only option is to basically dive into the ocean and hope to catch some fish. But these people are Rohingyas, not Bengali, so fishing isn't exactly their forte. The ones who do miraculously succeed in fleeing the country make countries like Thailand and Bangladesh even more crowded than they already are. These aren't long-term solutions, especially Bangladesh, which by 2050 is going to be halfway submerged and on its way to becoming the real-life Atlantis. So the Rohingya people literally have nowhere to go. Add on the fact that they place themselves in the hands of human traffickers, who most of the time hold them for ransom, and you see just how desperate the Rohingya people really are. Even now, the Myanmar government continues to do nothing, as no direct attempt has been made to resolve this issue. In fact, since March 31st, the government has suspended the temporary IDs for the Rohingya people, stripping them of what little rights they had left. In fact, many experts believe that the government has gone so far as to fabricate Islamic terrorist threats to justify further attacks on the Rohingya. An accusation to the US by skeptics and conspiracy theorists alike. Jet fuel, can't melt, steel beams. If that wasn't bad enough, the president himself, Thein Sein, just signed a law banning Rohingya Muslims from having children less than 3 years apart, which sounds an awful lot like they're trying to stop the Rohingya people from growing and tainting their predominantly Buddhist country even more. On top of that, President Thein Sein even banned the aid group Doctors Without Borders in February, eliminating the only source of medical care for Rohingyas, leading to hundreds of additional deaths. Since 2012, thousands of Rohingya have been killed and over 140,000 wounded in violent assaults by Buddhist nationalists in what seems to be not only state-sponsored discrimination, but state-sponsored genocide and ethnic cleansing as well. But of course, no one really cared about the problem until the problem became international because of the mass Rohingya migration. Now, the UN did pass a resolution in December 2014 urging Myanmar to grant citizenship rights to the Rohingya people, but we all know the UN has about as much actual power as Hawkeye does in the Avengers. However, even in the face of all this, there's one thing that will ultimately help the Rohingyas, and that is exposure. The reason nothing has been done to help them, and they continuously suffer with state-sponsored discrimination, is because ultimately no one knows or cares about them. But you have the power to change that. Share this video and spread the word about the plight of the Rohingya struggle on every social media account you have. And we can finally break the cycle of the world ignoring the current apartheid and genocide that is occurring in Myanmar. Because ultimately, if you don't care for the Rohingyas, chances are no one else will either. And by the time anyone actually does anything, they'll be all gone. This is Zahir Rasheed signing off of the Rasheed Report.
This Deen TV video was made possible in part by Islamic Relief, working together for a better world, and by Guidance Residential, the #1 Islamic home financer in the U.S.